All right, hello everybody. This is Dark Conservative. Wait, who the fuck are you? You fucking Jason Voorhees wannabe?
Wow, that is so rude. Like, okay, so just so everyone knows, my name is not S-Man. That's literally it. So the S-Man you guys know and probably somewhat give a shit about, he had to dip out. It's raining really hard in his city, and I'm his replacement. I would like to think.
Well, Mr. Jason Voorhees lookalike, I do not know if you know, but this is a co-host specific program right here. Maybe on the discussions live streams I can have you on, but this ain't one of them.
What a spick.
Oh, you calling me a spick?
I mean, to be fair, you sound
I
like
have been. I
you
have
you
been told that I look Hispanic, but
you do look like a Midwesterner and a Hispanic New Yorker had a love child.
all right, that's it. Hey, Jason, do you know what it is that you do with a soccer ball?
Uh, hmm. What do I do with a soccer ball?
You kick it. No, I'm joking. But anyway, so now that we have got that rather elongated intro out of the way, we shall continue on with the news. So, hello everybody, it is the Dark Conservatarian here with my co-host, not S-Man, now turned into S-Man. Gonna be reviewing this one article that I was shared by. Oh, what the fuck is the guy's name? Was it? Dang it, Conservatarian Wolf or something like that. I don't know. You know who I'm talking about, right, S-Man? Though.
Yeah, yeah. This was a magical transformation going from not S-Man to S-Man. Like,
Let me see if I can like find him on Twitter very quickly because I want to like give credit where credit is due.
did you just
Um,
say "do" or "Jew"? You anti-Semite.
due. I pronounced do in a rather weird way. Okay. Christ's Wolf Dog. That's his name. Right. Yeah, the guy has a badass profile picture too. And I can appreciate a badass profile picture because everyone knows that I have one.
His mom said so. That counts as everyone, guys.
Fuck you. Anyway, so yeah, this was shared by Christ's Wolf Dog. So anyway, nobody watching. S-Man, share the link to the browser of this stream around on Discord and whatnot.
All right. God, can you imagine if I shared the Hangout link? DarkCon would cut my throat.
Oh yeah, I would boot you out and everyone else who dared try to join. But yes, so I offered up a poll asking what people would do about immigration, what their policy would be on immigration, and he said privatizing the borders or privatization. And this guy is not an ANCAP, at least not yet, but he has a whole lot of ANCAP sympathies. And as far as I'm concerned, I do not know of what would be the practicality of privatized borders and keeping a sovereign nation both at the same time. But I just thought, why not entertain the idea? As he shared this article, oddly enough, by the Washington Times, which that was kind of a weird. This is kind of a weird, unconventionally right-wing opinion that is being shared by a typically center-left news site. So yeah.
All right, let me shield the link out here.
So the title of it says right here, making the wall work. But if you look up here in the link, it says why the Trump wall should be privatized. So without further ado, let's get on with it. Analysis and opinion. So yeah, again, I guess I must add a disclaimer that I do not fully trust Washington Times, but considering of how interesting this article looks, especially for which website that it was posted on, we shall at least take it with a grain of salt.
all right, I just posted the link in the S-Man thing, and I'm going to post the link in the uh into the dark fascitarian circle. So
Hello Ryan, how are you? As he arrives in the chat.
I wonder how many people are going to look at the beginning of the stream and they're going to be like, "What the fuck was going on?" Because the thumbnail is literally not S-Man with that getup on, looking like Jason Voorhees.
All right, so analysis opinion. With 470 BC destruction at Thermopylae of the 300 Spartans and a group of Greek auxiliaries at the hands of a huge invading Persian army under King Xerxes, all Greece appeared open to conquest. The Athenians were particularly at risk and were not much comforted when the Oracle of Delphi predicted that Athens would be saved by her wooden walls. Okay. All right, so S-Man said talk to you later, and he has left. So see you later, S-Man. All right, so I don't know. I guess he did say that he was gonna leave soon, anyways. But he just wanted to like give that rather awesome intro at the beginning of the stream. So there's that. But I'm going to like try to get this stream done and out of the way. Ryan says I get most of my wall news from Reason.com. I've kind of given up on Reason TV because they, ever since that immigration video that I responded to, I mean, I did not immediately unsubscribe from Reason TV or their YouTube channel. I mean, I did not immediately unsubscribe after that video, but just, I don't know. I guess that was kind of a big blow on how I looked at Reason TV, and ever since then, it's just been going steadily downhill, my image of them, to the point that I was all like, they're irrelevant to me. So, anyway. I mean, even libertarians that are arguably more libertarian than me have some problems with them. The problem was that Athens had no wooden walls. The great soldier statesman Themistocles, I think that's how you pronounce it. The great soldier / statesman Themistocles finally convinced the Athenians that the walls were actually the walls of the Athenian warships. He convinced the populace to redouble their shipbuilding efforts. Themistocles proved right and defeated the Persian fleet. Without the fleet, Xerxes had an army he couldn't support. Perhaps President Trump does not need the towering structure that he envisions as his wall. There may be alternative and better ways of regaining control of our southern border. Which, yeah, I mean, I've been saying this for a little while now. I do not know if I made this clear, like in the early points of my YouTube channel, or even during any point during the election. But as of recently, definitely, I've been saying that I'm rather meh on the wall and whether or not it should be built. But I can definitely see both sides on it. Like, for example, those against the wall would say it's too damn expensive. We have a debt and deficit that we need to take under control. But then on the other side, the people who say that we need to like stop illegal immigration because of them like sucking off of welfare and stuff like that is like, yeah, I can definitely understand your side as well. But to all those who are pro-wall, I would advise you to like cite me a source that says in the long run it would save money to build the wall rather than just keep the border, you know, wallless. Wallless, if that is even a word. Eric Prince, the founder of the Blackwater Security, has suggested that the war in Afghanistan be privatized. Wait, what? I'm sorry. What do you mean? Like a band of private mercenaries go hunting down Osama bin Laden? Is that what you're talking about? I mean, I guess if it would get the job done a lot faster than the American military, then I guess it's doable. But I haven't seen the argument or the possibilities of that actually being a thing. Ryan also says in the chat they do make good point about issues like building the wall. Like the building the wall will encroach on privately owned property. See, I say that there is a way that you can build a wall without having to take eminent domain. I mean, I think that's what you're referring to anyway, Ryan. I mean, you can just build the wall around people's private property. And if some United States citizens on their private property end up on the outside, on the south side of the wall, whilst technically still being in American territory, well, then I guess they're kind of on their own when it comes to protection of the wall. But ultimately, if they don't want to sell their property for the wall to be like directly on the border, well then, okay, we'll build the wall north of you, but you're on your own as far as the drug cartels go, sir. I mean, that is, if that's their prerogative, that's their prerogative, I say. Ryan says yes. All right. This will likely not happen. The Pentagon is against the idea, and the Afghans are not wildly embracing it, but perhaps it is time to consider privatizing our barrier in the South. Okay, so they're acting like that they're talking about this in present tense, about the idea of privatizing the war in Afghanistan. And this article was posted September 6th, 2018. And obviously by now, I mean, if this article was posted in, say, 2010 or 2011 or something like that, I would be all like, okay, it might be understandable. But now in 2018, Osama bin Laden is long dead. Well, actually, I kind of have questions about the killing of bin Laden because I've seen an article, read an article talking about of how that the pictures of Osama bin Laden have been photoshopped. So that makes me go scratching my head a lot. But that aside, we're just going to take the official narrative of the Osama bin Laden killing at face value and say that, yeah, he was killed by Navy SEALs. If that is really the case, if the leader of Al-Qaeda is dead and Al-Qaeda is pretty much on the run, I do not see any further need to engage in Afghanistan. So why do we have to be there again is my question. All right. So Rich has still not arrived. He's supposed to be coming on as a co-host to try, as another trial run for him and whether or not I want to have him as a co-host and whatnot. All right. All right. So this is the article I was on. Americans are at our best when practicing capitalism, and Mr. Trump is perhaps our leading and most vocal champion of the free market approach. What? Are you kidding me? Mr. Pro-Tariff, Mr. Maybe I'll raise the minimum wage to $10 an hour, Mr. I'll implement eminent domain. That, Mr. Trump? You're calling a champion of the free market approach? The fuck? Don't make me laugh, Washington Times. Don't make me fucking laugh. I'm sorry, but that was just taking all of Mr. Trump's, taking all of the president's beliefs on economics into consideration. I just fucking laugh at that statement right there. That was a real gut buster. That was, I mean, knowing all of his beliefs, that's a hot take. He's perhaps our leading and most vocal champion of the free market approach. Yeah, of course. Mr. Trump, most leading advocate and champion of the free market approach, even more so than Thomas Sowell. Wow. This article just, oh man, I can't. I'm dying here, folks. I can't take this article seriously anymore. I'm sorry. Ryan also says in chat, I'm just amazed that an old mainstream media site is praising Trump. Yeah. I got a question. I got to see in the annotations here. Is this parody? Is this satire? Okay. So home opinion commentary. No notifications of satire because I'm sorry, that was too freaking stupid to be serious. I kind of forgot to give the Hangout link to all the rest of the peeps in Strike Force News chat. But anyway, there it is now. I mean, it's a little bit late to the party, but still, there it is for if anyone else in the official line of co-hosts wants to come on. But, oh man. All right. I'm trying to like see if there's like any other okay. I'm not seeing any annotation or disclaimer that this is satire. So the fact that this guy is being serious, it just makes this all the more laughable. Like, holy shit, dude. Holy shit. I really hope that a whole bunch of my ANCAP buddies like watch this live stream from the beginning to this point up to just laugh at that line right freaking there in this Washington Times article. Mr. Trump is perhaps our leading and most vocal champion of the free market approach. And cue the J.J. Jameson laugh. Wow. Just wow. Okay, I'm gonna ponder on that line enough now. I'm gonna just stop on that and move on. Why then could we not privatize construction of the barrier by soliciting bids from companies such as those which Blackwater has evolved to? Allow companies to submit bids to construct 500-mile sections of the new barrier. Rather than give them specifications to build a 50 or 100-foot wall, we should be telling the bidders that we want what we want done and let them figure out how to do it. We should be letting competition prevail. All right. We basically know how many leakers get through the present barriers along each section of the border and what percentage of those leakers are never apprehended, sadly. It probably averages out at upwards of 60% to 70% depending on the terrain. If the contractors can figure out a way to cut down on the illegals who actually breach the border, it would allow the Border Patrol to concentrate on becoming more agile and mobile in apprehending and deporting the leakers. You know what? I'm going to like pause here for a second and share the link to the browser and some other group chats. There we are. Okay, actually, I'm going to share it in another one. Just share it in some more. This is. I'm sorry that this live stream hasn't been better or well prepared than it is right now, but yeah, I need to get more professional with my setups right here. Show. Okay, so Ryan also says in the chat, there are people who think Trump would be good for the economy, though most just voted for him just as a fuck Clinton. Yeah, pretty much. I was a part of several technological experiments to place more eyes on the border with advanced sensors in the last decade. Sadly, once the leakers were on the U.S. side, there were simply not enough law enforcement assets to apprehend them. On average, 80% slipped through the net. If we allow interested contractors to look at the terrain and submit bids, it could significantly reduce the actual number of present leakers. That would allow the Border Patrol to hire the people to make them mobile enough to apprehend the vast majority of the leakers who do breach the contractor barriers. We have a baseline to measure what the contractors need to accomplish. Those that don't perform can be replaced along their sections of the border. This would give us the strategic flexibility to determine what works and what doesn't. Using technology such as sensors in a barrier system got a bad name during the Vietnam War and the ill-fated McNamara line. That was a half century ago, and sensor technology has made quantum leaps since then. Non-lethal barrier technology is also making great strides. Combined with highly mobile human close-in response teams, many illegals could be spotted approaching the barrier and warned off before actually crossing the border. The bottom line is that some combination of sensors, non-lethal barrier technology, and physical barriers may provide a cheaper and more effective border defense system. Given competition and quantifiable measures of performance, private industry can generally outperform the government in any area. If we can get a handle on illegal immigration, it would allow a workable fast track, temporary green card system. Most who illegally cross the border, as opposed to those seeking asylum from crime in their own countries, are not looking to stay permanently. They seek better job opportunities than at home. A fast-track temporary green card approach would help labor-starved industries such as agriculture and provide better screening in order to prevent tragedies such as the Tillman murder. My concern with the southern wall as a fixed barrier is that it would provide yet another major government program that runs against the grain of conservative promise to reduce government size and control spending. This is a good opportunity to let capitalism work. All right. So, hello, Scorch. How are you doing? We just got done reading an article talking about why the Trump wall should be privatized, as it says up there in the link. I don't know if you can actually see it, but it says in the title, Making the Wall Work, and it's trying to make the case of privatizing the wall instead of having a publicly owned wall at the southern border. Ryan also says in the chat, even though Trump is essentially a 90s Democrat. Yeah, essentially, Ryan, which is why I found the statement laughable. Which is why I found the statement laughable from this article when they said Mr. Trump is perhaps our leading and most vocal champion of the free market approach. You guys, if you paid attention to what I was reading right there, is a real hot take. Let me read this again because I know that I have a few of my ANCAP subscribers now tuning into this episode of Strike Force. Let me read this again from the Washington Times. Americans are at our best when practicing capitalism, and Mr. Trump is perhaps our leading and most vocal champion of the free market approach. Give you some time to I don't know. I don't know about you guys, but that just made me laugh, utterly bust a gut laughing, because Trump said that he does not rule out the possibility of raising the minimum wage to $10.50 an hour. He is for tariffs, and plus the fact that he is pro eminent domain in a lot of areas. That's not very free market. And plus, with that statement right there, you're putting Mr. Trump ahead of Thomas Sowell, for crying out loud. Heck, I would. Ben Shapiro is more pro-free market than the president is. Heartless Soy Boy says in the chat, "Fund the wall by crypto." Okay. I'm Scorch88 says in the chat, "I'm against the wall, but at least it should be private." I think is what he's trying to say there. It's kind of a. It was kind of a, I don't know, that chat comment right there was kind of, it might have been a few typos, but anyway. He also says XD in laughter of the statement. "I'm dying," he also says. Ryan says, "Guess if the wall is privately funded, it would remedy the issue of tax spending." Exactly, Ryan, which I think is one of the points that Washington Times was trying to make. Scorch88 also says, "The corporatist, is their best example of free market," right? Sorry, I'm on my way home. I see. Well, safe drive home, Scorch. But anyway, so we're pretty much done with that article. I'm going to have all these articles linked down in the description box below if you guys are interested in reading these articles yourself, maybe even responding to that Washington Times article yourself, if at all possible. But moving on with the news, my next article is one that I think that a lot of libertarians in my fan base, it just people who are anti-federal, well, have a generally anti-federal government attitude in general. And that is, the Federal Reserve is on a razor's edge. This by Forbes magazine. For the past few months, the cycle has been the same for investors. Tune into your favorite news outlet, turn up the volume, and watch speculation on what Fed Chairman Jerome Powell will do with interest rates. Sounds boring? Then you'll know what to do with your life savings. If you think that sounds absurd, it is. All right. So Soyboy asks in the chat, why do you have S-Man with the Jason mask as the thumbnail? That wasn't S-Man. What are you talking about, Soyboy? That was not S-Man. Sarcasm, everyone. But anyway, rewatch this stream from the beginning and you'll see why, Soyboy. We tried to like give an entertaining opening to the stream. S-Man is not here right now in the stream, and I don't reckon that he is gonna come back. He says that he had other things that he wanted to do, so there's that. All right. I was supposed to have Rich from the right side of history on the stream right now, but I don't know. Moving on. Unfortunately for investors, the Fed has insinuated themselves as the single most influential and headline-grabbing force in global securities markets. And I would say that in a way they are. Profiles of individual companies seem to have taken a back seat to the mighty power of rate adjustments, or, as we saw recently, no adjustment at all. Now, as Powell walks back the Fed's previously uproarious tightening schedule, we are left wondering why. And perhaps more importantly, how did we get here? This chapter in the economy began in the rubble of the 2008 financial crisis, riding on a campaign promise to resuscitate the economy after the collapse of the housing bubble. The Obama administration signed into law a nearly $1 trillion stimulus package. The assumption, according to Jared Bernstein, VP Joe Biden's economist at the time, was that each $1 stimulus would magically multiply into $2.30 as it worked its way through the economy. Sounds like magic. The recipient would spend his newfound money at the hardware store, and the hardware store owner would run out and spend his money at the haberdasher, and the haberdasher would buy a car. You get the idea. This desperately needed relief from the federal government would restore confidence and miraculously save the financial system via consumer spending, or so went the narrative. I mean, isn't that basically what Reagan was proposing with his tax cuts in the 1980s? Except his method of getting this kind of result was different. Instead of like taking money from the federal government and then giving it into the economy, instead you would just let the people keep more of their money in the economy, and then they would come to a higher tax bracket and therefore more revenue just by them naturally growing their wealth. So Soyboy says, actually, never mind. Build wall to add $5 billion to the debt to collapse the state, says Soyboy. Yeah, I disagree with that method of achieving Ancapistan. I agree with more of the peaceful method of it. The reality is, of course, far darker. Nearly $14 billion was mailed out to distressed seniors in the form of checks, a tirelessly debunked Keynesian stimulus that expanded the size of seniors' savings accounts far more than it did their spending habits. Worse yet, the vast remainder of personal aid was distributed in the form of tax relief, leaving most people utterly unaware that they received assistance at all. Ultimately, hundreds of billions in new debt were incurred for the purpose of relieving the country's existing debt disaster, with criminally little effect on the overall performance of the economy. Bernstein was wrong. So they tried to fix the debt with more debt. That seems almost self-defeating. Hello, CP Projections. How are you doing? Fast forward to 2012, when the Fed, frustrated with the slow pace of the economic growth, announced an unprecedented campaign of quantitative easing, whereby they began purchasing $40 billion in mortgage debt every month. Not surprisingly, during this period of easy money, governments and corporations gorged on more debt. Naturally, the Fed's balance sheet ballooned even further. Not surprising. Pumpkin Rose in the chat says, I agree with Soyboy. Build the wall solely because it'll collapse the government faster. The wall is otherwise inherently unethical. Unless there was like an army actually marching up from the south, from like Latin America or something, trying to invade everybody. I mean, that's one of the more obvious reasons as to why border walls are made. But other than that, it's a little bit getting a little bit more into the weeds when it comes to like just mere illegal immigrants. 7 years later, we're in trouble. We're now facing a ticking debt bomb of seismic proportions. As shown in the chart below, $4.5 trillion in U.S. Treasury debt must be refinanced in 2019 alone, and a whopping $11 trillion within the next 5 years. This is the real reason the Fed can't raise rates abruptly. Even a modest increase in interest rates will cost the government hundreds of billions in extra debt service payments, on top of the nearly $400 billion we already pay annually. Keep in mind that these interest payments are set to increase exponentially over the next 10 years, according to the CBO. Corporate debt is no better. At the end of 2018, corporate debt in the U.S. totaled $9 trillion, accounting for an estimated 46% of GDP. A record 60% of NASDAQ companies have junk bond-rated debt maturing in the dangerously near future. See chart below. Smaller companies are at risk too, with many holding floating rate debt at levels double or even triple their market caps. As far as corporate debt goes, well, I say do not bail out those corporations or anything like that. I mean, if that was the idea of the federal government at all, I say no, don't do that. Just let the companies fail under their own weight. I mean, if they're a failing company, let them fail on their own. Do not artificially prop them up with a whole bunch of subsidies and whatnot. And then whatever debt is owned by each appropriate individual that used to run the company, well, have them slowly pay it off. I would say. So Pumpkin Rose says also in the chat that would be their government coming to fight our government, neither of which is legitimate in the first place. Well, I don't know. If like a foreign government was coming up to like tyrannically rule over the American people, well then I would disagree right there. That is, well, okay. That would be, I mean, if the job of the US government, for example, was to protect us from another government, I mean, yes, I get the ANCAP idea that any taxation is theft and is a violation on liberty. But imagine even more so a foreign army coming in to tyrannically take away people's religious liberties, for example. That's even more abhorrent than just a mere tax, or taking away people's gun rights, or seizing their private property in general. All that is far more abhorrent than say, for example, the United States taxing its people to like have a military to protect them from the more abhorrent liberty violations of a foreign government or foreign army or whatever. Scorch88 says border walls are just ways to track people down and keep them paying taxes. What? Border walls are just ways to track people down? No, that's what NSA spying is about. I do not. Well, the only way that it would track people down in any way is whether or not a person is trying to get through a said barrier. But aside from that, it would not track people down when they get into the country, like whether they go to a Starbucks or go to a McDonald's within our country. Hello, Rational Outlaw. Hello, Red Feather, and see you later, Ryan. Good luck with occupation, says Scorch88. Right? I mean, obviously the people can try to resist, but I don't know. I mean, it is a bit of a debate for another time. Which that is what me and Esoteric Entity will probably have to go for sometime, is like a round 2 on our debate, essentially. Although I do not know of how debatey it was, our last live stream that we had with each other. Let me check my Twitter here for a second. Okay, never mind. So originally Rich was supposed to come on this program, but I'm almost starting to like give up on him coming on right now. So it might just be me for the entire program. I don't know. The Fed's pause last Wednesday. One second. Wanted to take another swig of my coffee there. The Fed's pause last Wednesday, along with several recent comments by Powell, confirmed many investors' Fed suspicions. Where there is smoke, there may be no fire. Yellen painted the Fed in a corner. And now with crisis levels of debt looming over the public and private sector, it is precisely the wrong time to hastily hike interest rates. The Fed is lucky that inflation levels have remained muted and in fact have dropped recently, while economic growth has remained strong. In this benign environment, the Fed has nearly created a financial crisis so that they have room to cut rates in a future financial crisis. Audit the Fed, says Red Feather. I agree, Red Feather. The Treasury is also trapped. They are responsible for refinancing Obama-era debt while also financing nearly $1 trillion of current government deficit spending. Treasury recently announced plans for another record-breaking debt issuance. Easy money is a drug, and the world is addicted. And like addiction recovery, taking away the drug too quickly can have potentially fatal effects for the patient. Years of reckless access to credit have created a rock and a hard place for the Fed. Raising interest rates now not only costs the Treasury more money than they... Raising interest rates now not only costs the Treasury more money than they do not have, but also leaves the debt-loaded NASDAQ companies starving for credit. Smart monetary policy may be the only way to defuse the new debt bomb we've created. Tread carefully, Mr. Powell. End of article. So, yeah, this is like just another example right here of why people disapprove of the Federal Reserve so much. And honestly, I am going to say, like, I have seen people like my 2 cents make the argument for why we have to get rid of what he is calling like fiat currencies, you know, in regards to paper money as compared to the gold standard. I've heard many people go back to how we should go back to the gold standard instead of using paper money or cryptocurrency, but I'm just gonna stick for gold right now. But assuming if we did stay on paper currency for the future, it is obvious that more money is going to get printed. I mean, it's inevitable. But from my layman's perspective, what is the biggest issue is of how fast that you print that money. More money is, in all inevitability, going to get printed, and inflation will rise ever so slowly. But if it raises too fast, then yeah, you're going to have people not able to adjust their budgets and whatnot, and they'll be paying $40 per loaf of bread when they only have a budget of $5 per loaf of bread. Scorch88 says in the chat, you can track who enters the country so you can take money and tax them. Right, I guess that does make sense. Well, okay. You do end up taxing people that want to migrate into your country by having them pay a migration fee. Okay, that might not be the official term right there as a migration fee, but I do know that if you want to move into a country, you do have to pay a fee of some type. But I definitely think, I definitely hear as to how that the fee is kind of ridiculously high. It's what, $1,000 to immigrate into the United States or something like that. I think that it should be a bit cheaper than that. Of course, I could be wrong in the numbers of what the fee actually is. You can track who enters the country so you can take money and tax them. But also, Scorch, that is something that I did kind of that I did kind of address a little bit earlier. I did say that the only tracking that the government would do with a wall is who passes through that barrier. But once they pass through that barrier, they cannot be tracking them any further unless they were to do like NSA spying or something like that, which I'm obviously against NSA spying. Both sides of the board does this. That's how it's supposed to help track people. Also, Afghanistan is a good example with good luck with occupation. It has add over $1 trillion to the debt. Now times that with an ANCAP size of American. Scorcha88 is saying to me that I'm meaning a processing fee. All right, thanks, Scorch. But with that second comment right there, let me read that again. Also, Afghanistan is a good example with good luck with occupation. It has added over $1 trillion to the debt. Now times that with an ANCAP size of American. Okay, the first part I get right there. Like Afghanistan was a tiresome and expensive war that added to the debt. I get that, but now times that with an ANCAP size of America. I'm confused. What are you trying to say right there, Scorch? Anyway, so moving on to more Russia news. Like, I thought that we were done with talking about Russia collusion a long while ago. I think what Scorch88 is trying to say, what he's trying to say is now times that with an Ancapistan size of America or something. I don't know. So this is from Washington Examiner talking about Russian collusion. I thought we were done with this story. I mean, I personally was done with talking about Russian collusion a long time ago, but I guess the world isn't done talking about Trump's alleged Russia collusion. Excuse me. So, Mueller clears Trump. No Russia collusion, no obstruction of justice. This posted on March 24th, 2019, 3:37 p.m. So this is like very recent, folks. I might even do like a highlights video of me reading this article. Special counsel Robert Mueller concluded there was no conspiracy between the Trump campaign and Russia, but did not make a determination on whether President Trump obstructed justice. Attorney General William Barr wrote in letter to lawmakers on Sunday. The special counsel's investigation did not find that the Trump campaign or anyone associated with it conspired or coordinated with Russia in its efforts to influence the 2016 U.S. presidential election. All right, so keep that in mind, people. They're talking specifically about the presidential election. Anybody who had any business dealings with Russia outside of the presidential election, even those who like currently in the Trump staff, if they had business with Russia and it was outside of activity of the U.S. presidential election, then it doesn't matter. But they're talking specifically about the presidential election and say that there was no collusion regarding that from Trump or any of his people. So for any of those people that want to point out, no, there were people that had business dealings with Russia in the Trump staff. Well, then, yeah, maybe, but not regarding the presidential election. All right. Barr said in the 4-page letter describing the conclusions of Mueller's nearly 2-year investigation. The Trump campaign did not conspire or knowingly coordinate with the Internet Research Agency to conduct disinformation and social media campaigns to sow discord and interfere in the election, nor did it conspire or coordinate with the Russian government during efforts to hack Democrats, despite offers from the Russians to assist the campaign. The special counsel determined, excuse me, I'm going to take a break from this and read the chat a little bit more. Red Feather says, I don't know where people get the idea that America is the only country with immigration laws. Well, I don't think anybody outwardly says that, Red, but people definitely almost seemingly act like it anyways. Or at least America is the only one that they practically go honing in on the issue of immigration. So it kind of almost gives off the narrative that they practically think that we're the only ones with harsh immigration laws or whatever. You can't just go move to wherever you want without some sort of scrutiny. Continuing on with Red's comments, by the way. Next, they will probably say Trump paid Mueller off. I don't know. I mean, if that's the case, well, then this dead horse gets beaten even more. Scorch says, I'm saying good luck trying to occupy a U.S. size Ancapistan. So as if Ancapistan was the size of the U.S. Ah, I think I see what you mean there, Scorch. Sleepy Projection says, can somebody make me some food? All right. I will say, Scorch, that it would be hard for them to occupy the entirety of the United States. But there are some people. Okay. I mean, this is a whole bunch of theorizing right here, so there's nothing conclusive as to how an occupation would go along if some Latina American army or even an army like across the oceans or whatever was to try to invade the United States. They would probably only get a sliver of American land for themselves and not the entire thing. If, like, say, the U.S. was turned into Ancapistan. Like, the United Peoples of Ancapistan, we'll just call it that, for example. Like, a portion. An invading army would only get a small, I would say, at least get a small sliver, end up conquering a small sliver of land from the United Peoples of Ancapistan. But I will say that, yes, the resistance would be so harsh that they could probably, like, stop the invading army dead in its tracks at a point. Sleepy Projection says, can somebody make me some food? And Red Feather says, sure, Sleepy, you want a sandwich? Wow, Red Feather, you have such internalized misogyny. You are adhering to the patriarchy. How dare you? Whee! All right, anyway, continuing on. Continuing on with the Russia collusion story. I mean, Mueller did not issue a conclusion on whether Trump obstructed justice during the investigation, which I will say that as far as obstruction of justice goes, that is a little bit more open, I say at least. If people want to point out an example of Trump obstructing justice, I would find that a little bit more believing than him actually colluding with the Russian governments to try and get him elected. Leaving it to the Attorney General to decide whether the president obstructed justice. The special counsel said that while this report does not conclude that the president committed a crime, it also does not exonerate him. Barr revealed that he and Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein have found that there is not sufficient evidence to determine whether Trump obstructed justice. After reviewing the special counsel's final report on these issues, consulting with department officials, including the Office of Legal Counsel, and applying the principles of federal prosecution that guide our charging decisions, Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein and I have concluded that the evidence developed during the special counsel's investigation is not sufficient to establish that the president committed an obstruction of justice offense, Barr wrote. All right, so there's that paragraph on whether or not he obstructed justice. And what is this? Oh, I see. I guess that's the letter right there if anybody wants to read it, but I'm not going to read it any further. Red Feather says, LMAO, Dark Con. Yep. Scorch88 says, I agree, but the financial loss would be too great, says Scorch. Although it kind of depends on what the economy of the invading army is. So, yeah. How healthy? Okay. Continuing on, the White House called Mueller's findings a total and complete exoneration of Trump. The special counsel did not find any collusion and did not find any obstruction. Attorney General Barr and DAG Rosenstein further determined that there was no obstruction. The findings of the Department of Justice are a total and complete exoneration of the President of the United States, White House Press Secretary Sarah Sanders said it in a statement. Barr sent his letter to lawmakers less than 2 days after Mueller completed his investigation. He and Rosenstein, who oversaw the investigation, spent the weekend analyzing the report and determining how much of it Congress and the American public will get to see. The Attorney General has said he wants to be transparent, though how much of the report will be released depends on the law. Justice Department guidelines recommend against releasing negative information on people who have not been indicted. Barr said Sunday he will follow those guidelines. A contentious battle is expected over the report as top Democrats demand the full release of Mueller's report, while some Republicans want to take transparency a step further, including the release of the scope memo for the Russia investigation and related documents. Earlier this month, the House voted 420-0 to pass a resolution calling for the release of Mueller's final report to the public, with 4 Republicans voting present. The president could also try and okay. One second. The president could also try and assert executive privilege in order to stop the stop scrolling me up, Washington Examiner, damn it. Where did I? Okay. The president could also try and assert executive privilege in order to stop the Justice Department from releasing evidence in the investigation, though Trump has so far said he's fine with the report being released. House Judiciary Chairman Jerry Nadler, Democrat of New York, said on NBC's Meet the Press that the Supreme Court has already established that a president could not claim executive privilege to hide wrongdoing. Nadler, noting that Mueller did not exonerate the president, announced in a tweet Sunday afternoon that his committee will be called in to testify in the near future. In light of the very concerning discrepancies and final decision-making at the Justice Department following the special counsel report where Mueller did not exonerate the president, we will be calling Attorney General Barr in to testify before House Judiciary in the near future. Okay. The investigation has lingered over Trump for most of his presidency. Yeah, tell me about it. And it gets tiresome, ensnaring some of his close advisors. Mueller indicted 34 people and 3 Russian companies, including 6 people close to the president. Mueller is not recommending any further indictments. Barr's chief of staff called White House lawyer Emmett Flood shortly before the summary of Mueller's conclusions was released to the public to give him a readout of the 4-page document. CNN reported, a Justice Department official told the network that has been the extent of communications between the department and the White House on the matter. Trump left Washington, D.C. on Friday morning for Florida, where he is spending the weekend at his Palm Beach property, Mar-a-Lago, with First Lady Melania Trump and their son, Barron, who turned 13 last week. Over the course of the weekend, Trump was updated about any Russia investigation developments by his lawyers. On Sunday, in his first tweet since Mueller concluded his investigation, Trump appeared upbeat. "Good morning, have a great day," he wrote, and it marked a change, even if momentarily. Scrolled me up again, the article did. Trump appeared upbeat. "Good morning, have a great day," he wrote. It marked a change, even if temporarily, in how Trump has reacted to Mueller-related news. The president has often ranted against the witch hunt and declared no collusion amid developments in the investigation. At times, he publicly insisted the investigation be shut down. The president ultimately let Mueller finish the investigation, and no collusion was found. I will also say that the freaking idea that Trump is going on a vacation down to one of his Florida resorts. Yeah, I don't know if that's actually necessary, because doesn't he already take too many golf trips, essentially? Almost along the same lines of Obama. Red Feather says, "What? How dare Trump go on vacation?" Well, the Washington Examiner was not necessarily criticizing Trump for going on vacation. They were just stating that he did go on vacation in Florida. Although I will be, I guess, even slightly critical that he gone on vacation, because comparing the golf trips between Trump and Obama. Like, all the conservatives like criticize of how often Obama gone golfing, but what about Trump? I don't know. The amount of times that either of them have golfed have kind of been, I guess, overall a non-issue to me. It does show a sign of laziness, but does it show a sign of how crappy their leadership skills are? How crappy their term in office is? Not necessarily. I'm gonna close that one because I don't have any articles pulled up on it. This will probably be the last article of the day, folks. This is from My Two Cents' own website, and the title of it goes: "Are Libertarians holding the door open for the radical and rabid left? A response to Black Pigeon Speaks." Red Feather says, "Difference being Trump actually does beneficial things when he is working." Says Red Feather. Well, I mean, I don't necessarily disagree that I can at least point out a few things on one hand that Trump has did that are beneficial. But the fact that you said that they are actually beneficial, that is kind of subjective. To argue, I'm arguing for devil's advocate anyway, Red, when I say that it's subjective on whether or not they're beneficial or not. That doesn't mean necessarily disagreeing with you, whether, in my opinion, they're beneficial or not. I'm just saying that it's subjective because leftists will disagree with how beneficial Trump's works are or not. All right, so getting on with My Two Cents' article. We've all seen it coming for a long time. First, there was the adpocalypse of 2017. We all cringed when we saw Alex Jones kicked off just about every social media platform within a matter of days. Now Google has been caught red-handed. In a leaked document, Google admitted that they are moving away from a platform of free speech and towards one of active censorship. Excuse me. Oh, hello, Common Sense Guy. How are you doing? Pumpkin Rose says Trump's works only expand government, so it's not subjective. I'm saying that the opinion about whether or not what he did is subjective, whether or not people think that what he did was positive or negative or not, Pumpkin. And also, I will point out that he got rid of the individual mandate regarding healthcare, so that is one thing that is positive and is not an expansion of government. He's also cut taxes. I mean, I know that Two Cents has said that only in the short run doesn't mean anything, but still, cutting taxes just in general is the government letting people keep more of their own money and is a restraining on their own power over people. And also his cutting of environmental regulations, and especially his cutting of regulations on offshore oil drilling and the coal industry. That's kind of another examples of him trying to restrain the government a bit. But I will say that his expansion of tariffs is definitely an expansion of government. And man, this article is a long one. Damn, 2 cents. All right. So S-Man Speaks is back and in the chat instead. Pumpkin Rose says he's not. He's not what, Pumpkin? And S-Man Speaks is back in the chat, says hello. Hi there, S-Man. This is truly disturbing, especially to those of us on the political right who know all too well that the big tech firms like Google, Twitter, and Facebook are actively collaborating with the left to censor opinions that conflict with the progressive agenda. Many commentators have made a living using these platforms, and the fear that their primary methods for content distribution and income could disappear at a moment's notice is daunting. I also, okay. Pumpkin Rose says in the chat, I linked the Federal Register, which shows the flow of regulations has only continued as before. Okay, I mean, I've read other articles that go talking about of how he has cut regulations. Okay, I mean, I'm not going to say that he is cut regulations, period, but there are some areas that he is cutting regulations still. I mean, it's not like every single thing that he does is definitely a bigger an expansion on government. Like, I will say at least though that his gun control rhetoric, it does ring more of a gun grabbing sort of narrative. Although he hasn't actually practiced that out during his administration, he's only proposed it. Which, by the way, that's bad enough as it is that he merely even proposes the possibility of bringing back Dianne Feinstein's assault weapons ban, which that is strikes a big blot in my mind of his image. But yeah. But at least he hasn't actually gotten away with. I mean, yeah, he did ban bump stocks, which that is neither here nor there in practice, really. But it still is it still like does bring off the message that he is just expanding government power in general. But outside of that, he hasn't really got much done when it comes to guns, and thank God he hasn't gotten much more done than that. Red Feather says Trump doesn't want to expand government. He said many times during the shutdown that it just shows how much overspending the government does every day. Yeah, I mean, even if you're like a minarchist or something else that is not an ANCAP, one thing that the government shutdown at least shows people is how they can be like less reliant on the government to at least get off of welfare, for as a prime example. Pumpkin Rose says, Red Feather, yes, let's just instantly believe everything politicians say. Being sarcastic. Pumpkin Rose says, wasn't he part of the bump stock ban? Okay. He said that chat comment before I had made my whole monologue about the bump stock ban, but yeah, I've addressed the bump stock ban. I mean, his position on guns is rather weak and leans more towards being a gun grabber than being a pro-gun rights advocate. Scorch says Trump has stated he wants the Fed to take guns first and then take them to court. Yeah, like I said, I've addressed that. Red Feather says, I don't believe everything politicians say. And Scorch says, so he wants to lose your American rights before you, he wants you to lose your American rights before you go to court. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely shitty. Red says, but 98% of workers in the EPA specifically are apparently non-essential. Pumpkin Rose says, Red Feather, then why believe Trump over the Federal Register? Do you trust him over the Federal Register on the basis of him being Trump? When was this, Scorch? Have a link, says Red Feather. Really, Red? You hadn't heard about Trump's pro-gun control rhetoric that he had espoused during the freaking or around the time of the Parkland shooting? You hadn't heard of that? Oh shit. Like, where have you been this whole time, ma'am? For a long time, okay, so continuing on with this article, because I think that it's going to get rather debatey in my chat. I might just ignore most of the chat comments and just continue on with this article. For a long time, conservatives and libertarians were largely in agreement about the right of private businesses to do business or not do business with whoever they pleased. However, many conservatives and even some libertarians are now saying that big tech has gone too far. Oh boy. Well, arguably, yeah, they might have gone too far, but what is it that you're proposing to do with it? I want an internet bill of rights. Okay, now you're going too far, bub. Like, for example, Styx Hexenhammer 666. I think he said, actually, not Filthy Heretic, Esoteric. He'd done like a video responding to minarchists, and he played a clip of where that Styx said that he wants internet to be like a public utility or something like that. And I will say that that is kind of, well, that is pretty damning on how much of a libertarian he is. I would almost say at this point that he's not really a libertarian. He's more of a Trumpist, if anything. excuse me. How we tried to play fair and let market competition work, but big tech is simply too powerful. Unless we want to be sounds forever, we need to abandon free market principles and fight for direct government regulation in order to save our place in public discourse. In particular, the YouTube commentator Black Pigeon Speaks, with a following of nearly 400,000 subscribers, released a video this past week calling for the government to begin regulating social media as publishers. In doing so, such platforms would lose their legal immunity regarding content posted by their users and then bear liability for any and all content that appears on their platforms. If platforms like YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter are going to censor some content, they might as well be held liable for what they censor and jailed to and fail to censor, just like CNN, Fox News, or any other publisher. At least this is how the argument goes. Other commentators such as Styx Hexenhammer 666 and Paul Joseph Watson have likewise called for an Internet Bill of Rights. Yeah, just like I said earlier, to provide for free speech on big tech platforms. You do not have free speech. You do not have like complete unadulterated free speech in somebody's private property. You have only the free speech that the owner of the public You only have as much free speech as the private property owner grants you on their property. Pumpkin Rose says, the dark conservatarian, they haven't gone too far. They can't do anything without the help of government, in which case the government is what's going too far, not big tech. What I mean by that, Pumpkin, is, for example, Jack Dorsey and the rest of his Twitter staff. Like, both he and his Twitter staffer were being like debated by Tim Pool on the Joe Rogan podcast, and their method of kicking people off the platform, I say, does go too far. I mean, at that point, I do not say, oh, yeah, they're going too far, so therefore we need to take government action. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm just saying that, in my opinion, Pumpkin, that they are, like, going a little bit too far. Otherwise, they just chase users off their platforms. Yeah, I say that that's... Anyway. Their message is clear. Libertarians are simply naive and will be promptly done away with by progressive elites unless they stand up and utilize the power of government to fight back. As BPS stated in his video, libertarians are holding the door open for the radical and rabid left. And this is like BPS tweeting. New video. Social media is now nothing more than controlled Appa's suppression, and at least now they are admitting it. By the way, libertarians holding the door open for the radical and rabid left does not win you any points. Like, if you are meaning like the radical and rabid left to run their private property as much as they please, well, yeah, no, I disagree. I mean, it does win us libertarians some points in the consistent principle of private property rights. So that's where it wins us points, quote unquote. Black Pigeon Speaks. Pumpkin Rose says, at the Dark Conservatarian, do you want to just discuss this through voice? I think a conversation would be more interesting than discussing this through chat, through text. Right after this, Pumpkin Rose, I was thinking of like doing some video editing. So I don't know. Probably not. Sorry. But yeah. Before I explain why this response is misguided, I'd like to say that I have a great deal of respect for BPS. Wait, what? Okay. I've only heard nothing but a whole bunch of pro-alt-right authoritarianism about Black Pigeon Speaks. So I do not know what it is that 2 Cents knows that I don't, of what is so approving of BPS, but I guess I'll just continue on reading to see if he points it out or not. While I have a number of significant disagreements with him, I enjoy his content very much, and no one can deny that his videos are well researched and very informative. Nonetheless, I believe that he and everyone else advocating for government intervention to save online free speech fails to recognize why this type of government intervention will give the left exactly what it wants in the long run. All the arguments for government intervention in big tech boil down to some variation of the arguments for so-called natural monopolies. There are certain utilities such as water, electricity, and now the internet that are simply more profitable and efficient when everyone is using one centralized delivery system, or so we're told. As a result, one large monopoly inevitably forms due to convenience for the users and profitability for the owners. However, once that monopoly has had an opportunity to function free of competition, they realize that they now have significant sway over society in that they have the power to double prices at will or deny service to certain citizens in order to manipulate them. As a result, these natural monopolies must be allowed to exist, but only under heavy regulation from the state to protect the citizens. Allowed to exist, more like be kept to exist via tax, or not tax subsidies, but via subsidies and whatnot, just in general. I would add that as well. All right. So Red Feather says in the chat, I just watched those linked videos. I don't know how I missed that. Very disappointing. Yeah, it was very disappointing to me too, Red, when I first heard those. Like that's one of the biggest reasons why I overall lean more Republican than Democrat, is because Republicans, generally speaking, are at least more consistently pro-gun rights than Democrats are. I mean, yeah, you can argue that Republicans are not as pro-gun rights as ANCAPs, but still, Republicans are more towards the right direction than Democrats are on that issue. But then you have Trump, who kind of goes against the norm in that issue. She also says, Red Feather does, I say let them be discriminatory as they want. They are private companies and have rights to do so. The free market will take care of them. That's why people need to be smarter consumers as well. I agree, Red. This argument has led to the rise of many so-called public utilities, be it water, electricity, or the internet. We are told that the market simply cannot stop these powerhouses from forming and gaining control over society once their services become a necessity to live day to day. Google, Facebook, Twitter, and the rest of the big tech world have become de facto public utilities, and now the only way we can save right-wing speech is to introduce the same sorts of government regulations that prevent the electric companies from turning the lights off in homes with the wrong political views. I mean, I say, okay, as a monarchist, I say that one of the ways that you could like privatize the electricity industry is if like you're to have houses possibly running on big batteries instead of wires that connect up directly to the nearest power plant. Either that or powers run on, or houses run on their own solar panels or gas generators or any other methods. Like there's more than just one method to power a person's house than just a centralized power grid or power plant within the city. So yeah, I'm gonna just check my settings. Default high definition audio device. Okay, so God, feeling like I'm losing my voice here. Pumpkin Rose says every politician is a hypocrite. I'm not going to like sit here and argue that any one politician is like absolutely 110% consistent or anything like that with their principles, but I'm just saying, I'm like saying where I lean more towards and why. I mean, in comparison, Republicans are at least more consistently, they're not 110% consistent, but they're more consistently pro-gun rights than Democrats are. There's nothing to be disappointed in both. Okay, there's nothing to be disappointed in. Both parties are worthless. The regulations just increase regardless of what politician takes office. All right, they have no principles. They all work for the government. Yeah, well, that's just your opinion, Pumpkin. They have no principles. Yeah, as soon as a person becomes a politician, they immediately lose their any legitimate belief in their own principles. I highly doubt that. And you know, the live stream that I had with Esoteric Entity on that issue about, well, a few days ago, he was not able to like concretely prove to me that every single politician is illegitimate on every single one of their beliefs. Like, I can't remember what exactly it was that he was doing. He was just like pulling out a study, I think it was, trying to say as to how how laws go generally in one direction or something like that, no matter how many politicians vote anyway or whatever. That still did not make the point as to how the individual politicians are with their beliefs. So Red Feather says there is a program here where you can get solar, but you have to remain hooked to the grid. If you generate more power than you use, you get a discount, and the extra power goes back to the electric. I say that it should be voluntary on whether or not a homeowner can connect their solar panel or their house to the grid or not. Don't mandate it. Company, but currently it isn't very efficient, says Red Feather. All right. Well, Trump isn't technically a politician. Well, he is now ever since he became president, Red. Pumpkin Rose says, well, yes, actually, they work on behalf of the government. They work for the government. Oh, God. Which person do they work for in the government? I mean, it's not like the government itself is some big boss in a company or whatever. I mean, even the president, even though he's like considered the ultimate, the most powerful person in the country or even in the world for that matter, doesn't mean that Chuck Schumer, for example, is going to follow every single whim of President Trump. Red Feather says, well, they are supposed to be working for the people. Their constituents have to bitch at them and vote them in or out. All right, Red. Only issue is you have to install your own solar panels, and that's at least $30,000, says Red. That's in response to what I said earlier about connecting houses to the power grid. Pumpkin Rose says, well, no, but by heading that organization, you're working on behalf of that organization. As you can see by my link, they've all expanded regulations. There might be like some small regulations or whatnot, I don't know, that go under the nose of everybody. But the big ones like the minimum, but the big ones like the minimum wage or the individual mandate or stuff like that. Republicans typically fight against those at least. However, okay, so continuing on with the article, however, the evidence from history simply does not demonstrate that natural monopolies are the result of the market. After thoroughly examining the history of the electric, telephone, and cable television industries, author Thomas DiLorenzo concludes, the theory of natural monopoly is an economic fiction. No such thing as a natural monopoly has ever existed. The history of the so-called public utility concept is that the late 19th and early 20th century utilities competed vigorously, and like all other industries, they did not like competition. They first secured government-sanctioned monopolies, and then with the help of a few influential economists, constructed an ex-post rationalization for their monopoly power. DiLorenzo, 1996, part 58. Oh, I also want to like say on an earlier point that just because like regulations overall get increased, like all these minor regulations or whatever, that doesn't necessarily mean that, say, Rand Paul or Ron Paul, for example, agree with those regulations. But expansion. Pumpkin Rose says there's no big or small ones. They all restrict our freedoms. There's no big or small ones. I would have to massively disagree with that, Pumpkin Row. As, say, for example, a regulation saying that you cannot serve moldy food in your restaurant. That's a small one. But what is a big regulation is saying that you have to buy XYZ service, or I guess gun control can technically be considered a regulation. Compare a regulation banning a restaurant from serving moldy food. That's a small regulation in my mind. Whereas a big regulation would be a government regulation saying that you cannot own this sort of gun. You cannot own an AR-15, for example. Regulations regarding what specifically, says Red Feather. And Pumpkin Rose says in response, anything. These regulations tell us what we can and can't do with our own property. And Red says there are more things to regulate as well. Night Shift 10,000 is in the chat. Hello, Night Shift. There's no big or small ones. That's just what your girlfriend says when you're too small and she's trying to make you feel better. Like I said, refer to my earlier statement on why I disagree with the idea of big or small regulations. Oh yeah, Pumpkin Road. That shit pisses me off. They are forcing us to hook up to city water, says Red Feather. Okay. I don't know if that was a sarcastic chat comment or what, but moving on. I feel like that I should not be addressing the chat as much, as it just puts more of a strain on my voice, and plus the chat just has a whole lot going on at once. Okay, so I'm going to just power through the rest of this article right here. Or at least a good portion of it, a good few more paragraphs before I address the chat again. Does the evidence suggest that big tech resulted solely from free market forces, or like De Lorenzo suggests, did it result from government intervention, thereby resulting in ex post facto calls for legal status as a public utility? The evidence would suggest the latter. Yeah, for example, the only reason why monopolies remain indestructible is because government's helping to enforce those monopolies via subsidies or whatever. Or putting a legal restriction on whether anybody can engage in the certain industry that somebody holds a monopoly over. It's well documented that Google and other big tech firms benefit from generous tax credits and government subsidies not available to their competitors. Yeah, I vaguely researched up that there are subsidies given to Google. Ever since the one live stream on Mr. Dapperton's channel that I participated with my 2 cents and some other of 2 cents' patrons on. While providing tax credits is not necessarily the same as direct subsidies, the government choosing to tax certain industries more heavily while drastically cutting the tax rates for corporations like Google ends up tipping the scales heavily in the favor of those corporations and not allowing the market competition to function as it normally would. Yeah, I would say that it is a better idea to tax businesses and people more equally. I mean, if there is to be a tax. Combine this with the receipt of lavish government contracts, and big tech firms become confident that they will be considered essential by the government. If they ever cease to be profitable, they can rest easy knowing that the government will keep them afloat, as they did with Chrysler and General Motors between 2008 and 2014. Hello, Loudmouth.
Hello, how's it going?
It's going sore right now, as I've been reading a lot and I've been reading the chat a lot.
Okay.
I feel like I lose my voice half the time in these live streams.
What's the general consensus?
Yeah. So I was reading an article talking about privatizing the wall, the Federal Reserve, and how it's on a razor's edge, and talking about how the Mueller probe found nothing regarding Trump and Russia collusion. So
I think pretty much that surprised nobody except for hardened left-wing ideologues.
Yeah,
it makes that whole "Wish You a Mueller Christmas" sketch from a few months ago all the more cringy than it was before.
Mm.
Yeah. That sketch is one of the worst things I've ever seen on the internet, despite Tara Strong's very milky qualities.
Right.
That couldn't save the sketch.
So, what this article is specifically talking about is talking about monopolies. It's a My 2 Cents article, as he is talking about saying something in response to Black Pigeon Speaks. It's Black Pigeon Speaks is saying that you libertarians are holding the door wide open for leftists when you give them the private property, when you give them like full private property rights over their own websites and who they can or cannot kick off.
I mean, it is true that leftists do seem to dominate corporate culture.
Right.
That's kind of one of the big ironies of the entire political spectrum is the left often positions themselves ideologically as opposed to corporate oligarchy, and yet the biggest proponents of left-wing politics are corporate oligarchs.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very ironic state of affairs if you think about it.
Right. They are ironically the ones that are getting the tax subsidies, even though they supposedly would act like that they're against, well, not tax subsidies, but just government's business subsidies in general. When ironically,
well, yeah, that's the main. That is one of the big arguments that if they are going to take such subsidies and basically get such government favoritism in many ways, they can't really be taking ideological censorist positions the way they are. And there's no doubt they do. One study found that conservatives were 21 times more likely to be banned on Twitter than liberals.
So Esoteric Entity, or Esoteric the Free, is in the chat. Hello, Esoteric. And he says, you realize that Google, Facebook, and Twitter have all come out in support of having the FCC create their terms of service, right? Internet Bill of Rights.
That's very interesting, actually.
Yeah.
But you do know if it's regulated by the FCC, they might, if there's more government involvement in it, that would mean they would have to follow the First Amendment, and you might have legal trouble banning people for typing "learn to code."
Yeah, it's a grand irony right there.
That is an extremely grand irony. It really does boggle my mind about how loathsome Twitter was in that regard. The fact that they talked, it's against our policies to harass journalists like this because they were getting so many messages. But I'm thinking every time Trump tweets anything, his comment section is full of leftists who spit venom at him, as they should. They should have every right to do so.
Right.
But why do these journalists get a free pass? They're posting publicly on Twitter, and yet they believe that no one has a right to respond to them if they don't like the response. Then privatize your fucking Twitter, all right?
Yeah, block people,
or just block
people.
But Twitter headquarters going around and banning a very innocuous phrase just because a lot of people were using it to mock these assholes is really disgusting to me.
Mm-hmm.
Learn to code. That basically that meme comes from the fact that the Huffington Post I think it was 4 or 5 years ago when coal miners lost their jobs during the Obama administration, wrote articles encouraging coal miners to get jobs in programming. Thus, when a bunch of reporters on the Huffington Post lost their jobs, they're like, how does it feel? Learn to code. Like saying the same shit to them that they said to those coal miners.
All right. So continuing on with the article here, it's also worth noting that big tech firms were some of the biggest proponents of net neutrality and other FCC regulations. They're probably like, and as far as what SO said earlier about the Bill of Rights, like they're probably wanting to rewrite the Bill of Rights in, I don't know, like their own agenda. Like you do not have the right to say learn to code, for example. In fact, a person has the right to not be offended by your phrase of learn to code. I don't know. I mean, any way that you spell it, the Internet Bill of Rights is still like an encroachment on private property rights.
Oh, no doubt it is. That's why I don't generally support it as a libertarian. But at the same time, given the behavior of big tech, it's really hard for me to really want to expend any energy sticking up for them.
Oh, right. I mean, I guess so. It makes you not so. It makes you more apathetic than empathetic towards Twitter, for example.
Correct.
But,
right. Even though it does go against my principles in some ways, not always, to regulate them like that. At the same time, given their behavior, it's really hard for me to give a shit.
This has nothing to do with freedom of speech. I agree. So it's more private property and freedom of association.
Well, and that's kind of the main point. All right, Twitter is essentially their private site. If they want to ban somebody from using it, it's kind of similar to you invite a guest into your home and he starts mouthing off to you. You have a right to say, "All right, you have your free speech, but get the fuck out of my house." It's kind of like that.
Night Shift is essentially espousing my what I was trying to say earlier. Knowing them, they would write it, say, if someone is offended by something, you say you have broken the law and will be prosecuted. Yeah, how's that going to go? Yeah, the Internet Bill of Rights is kind of,
it could cause a lot more harm than good, to be honest. I don't.
Yeah.
I oppose it.
Yep. The details of what the Internet Bill of Rights is just a little bit. It has a whole lot of ambiguity to it, but it doesn't even matter of what is written and protected by the supposed Internet Bill of Rights. It is still like, an encroachment on private property rights.
Right. And ultimately, as big and powerful as big tech can be, sometimes they can be brought down through the free market. Okay. Like MySpace a decade ago seemed too big to fail, and look what happened there. Facebook is slowly declining. Twitter slowly declining. Their policies and their unfair treatment of their customers, essentially, their users are essentially their customers. All right, it can come back to bite them. They think they're so big that nothing can touch them, but it might not in the long run.
I will say that it is a whole lot easier to compete with these speech platforms like Twitter, Facebook, and so on and so forth, because I do not know about everyone else here, but I do not have as much investment into my Twitter account. If my Twitter account was to get taken down, yeah, I'll probably like harangue somebody for unjustly having it taken down or whatever. But in the end, I still have Discord to go to.
Well, I don't really have a Discord, probably. If my Twitter got taken down, it would be a major, major inconvenience.
Discord,
for me.
Gab, whatever else.
Well, mostly because I'm followed by a few influential people that I'd rather not lose contact with if I want to like bring them on a live stream or something. That's the main value my Twitter account has for me.
Although when it comes to like video uploading sites, I can understand people having a whole lot more emotional investment into, because it's a whole lot harder and more tedious and takes more effort to make a video than to just type a 200 character message on a speech platform.
Yeah, a full-length video, it takes up so much more data than a tweet or a little text message. It is much, much harder and much more costly to set up.
All right. Although there is there is BitChute, like in that shift says in the chat there. BitChute is growing a little bit in its business, but it still is not yet of the same level as YouTube. I mean, this is not
even close.
This is not me arguing that there should be an Internet Bill of Rights on video uploading sites, but still, BitChute is not yet on the same level as YouTube, because YouTube has people's recreational activities recorded on their dozens, hundreds, thousands of gamers have uploaded on there already, and it would take forever practically for BitChute to get on the same level of how many hours worth of content, of video gaming content, would be getting on there. We need decentralized platforms with no host servers and encrypted connections. All right. As with other regulations pertaining to so-called natural monopolies, the American public was told that net neutrality was for their own safety and to prevent internet service providers from having control over what they could and could not view on the internet. However, it went virtually unnoticed by masses of people as to just how much big tech stood to gain from net neutrality. See articles here and here to learn more. This isn't to say that big tech firms became the powerhouses they are solely because of government intervention. Obviously, millions of people use their services because such services are useful and were found to be more effective than other competitors, i.e. Bing, Yahoo, AOL, MySpace, etc. It is to say, however, that unlike industries in a free market where even the most successful businesses must constantly be wary of the threat of losses, these big tech firms are significantly more likely to be swayed by political pressure and not by the sentiments of their user base. Take, for example, the ban of Alex Jones from YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, etc. Jones had more than 2 million subscribers on YouTube with monthly earnings of up to $68,200. Which to me, okay, that is a lot of dough for like a single man, or maybe even a couple like raising a single kid or two. But for Alex Jones, it doesn't seem like a whole lot because he was running like a whole business with like, I don't know, dozens of employees.
That's only a percentage of that. That's just the revenue from his YouTube AdSense. That,
right.
I mean, he has many other forms of revenue other than YouTube AdSense. And $68,000 per month, that's a lot of money.
A Night Shift says in the chat, I thought that's why Twitch existed. Actually, you do have a point there, Night Shift. Twitch does have a whole lot of gamers. So, yeah, I mean, I guess if to make a point, BitChute is coming more to the same level of YouTube when it comes to hours of political content, whereas Twitch is coming more to the same level as YouTube when it comes to hours worth of gaming content. So yeah, keep that in mind. Since the YouTube Partner Program allows YouTube to pocket 40% of all earnings from participating channels, it is ridiculous to think that YouTube would have banned one of their highest earning channels if they were operating solely from a standpoint of trying to ensure profits instead of losses. In fact, YouTube would stand to make far more profits if they allowed advertisements to be played on a higher volume, on a higher volume of videos without demonetizing, if I can English, controversial content.
Well, people need to realize when it comes to Alex Jones, though, the main reason why they pulled the trigger on that guy was and deleted his channel was because of a lawsuit that was going on against him that was alleging that he was slandering a bunch of private citizens in a very malicious way. And keep in mind, since YouTube was profiting off his channel, they could potentially be culpable in that legal suit for profiting off a man's criminal actions. Slander is a crime.
All right.
So that's why they deleted his channel. They figured losing the revenue generated from the AdSense on his channel was worth it to avoid that kind of criminal culpability.
Right. I'm sorry. I'm like paying partial attention to the chat at the same time. You're saying that's because of slander and libel that YouTube wanted to like take that action to kick him off?
Yeah, correct. What Alex Jones claiming that the families of the Sandy Hook kids were crisis actors, that is absolutely falls under criminal slander. It's demonstrably not true. And those kind of claims have resulted in the families being horrifically harassed by some of his retarded followers.
All right. I want to like read Esso's entire chat message that he posted here in 3 chat messages. We need decentralized platforms with no host servers and encrypted connections. I've read those 2, but here's the 3rd one. That way it's impossible to restrict the internet or for the state to manipulate private companies through subsidies or through banking manipulations such as Operation Choke Point. All right.
Well, right, and someone says define controversial feminist frequency, and I will absolutely agree it is, and I think a lot of conservative content is unfairly maligned, but Nina Sarkeesian's content, as terrible as it is, I don't really think she did anything as bad as claiming that the families of some murdered kids were crisis actors. And Anise Sarkeesian is someone I am no fan of. You watch my video response to her, I absolutely can't stand her on a cellular level. But I don't think she ever did anything quite that bad.
Don't know if I ever saw that one. I'll have to like check it out or something.
Oh, I actually the one in her video on Islam, which was an absolutely steaming hunk of shit in so many ways. It was such a bad video, but there was nothing really slanderous about it. She didn't like against any private citizens the way Alex Jones targeted basic private citizens. They're not like a big figure like Donald Trump or Barack Obama or something. These people really didn't do anything to put themselves in the limelight other than the fact that their children were killed in a tragic shooting. All right, that does not make somebody a public figure, at least it shouldn't.
Right.
And when it comes to slander law, you can get away with a lot more directed against a public figure than you can against a private citizen. Because basically it's seen that if you decide to make yourself a celebrity by becoming a major movie star, a major politician, what have you, you're kind of accepting the responsibility that people are going to say some untrue shit about you. And you got to just be willing to take some of it as the cost of being a famous celebrity. Whereas with a private citizen who's not in the limelight, there's less of a burden of proof to qualify as slander for them.
And speaking of all this, Red Feather says in the chat, but she perpetuates the narrative that straight white men are an enemy to everyone on earth. And a whole lot of right-wingers were saying that Obama was an enemy to America. Like, I don't think calling somebody an enemy of something falls under slander, Red Feather. I mean,
right. I mean, her opinion somebody there, I think it's a fucking stupid opinion. I think it's a hateful opinion.
Yeah.
But it's not really slander. It is just her opinion that she does have a right to have, as stupid as it is.
How is Don Lemon saying white men are the biggest terrorist threat to America, not slander? Because here's the thing, Red Feather. You're not like talking about a single individual committing a particular act or anything like that. Looking at that statement, for example, from Don Lemon, is just looking at, you can tell off the surface it's just him espousing a hateful opinion. Whereas if Don Lemon, for example, was to say that Donald Trump was a pedophile, he better have a whole shit ton of evidence to back that up. But otherwise, it'll like fall under slander.
Well, even with Donald Trump, again, because he's the president of the United States, it's much harder to get convicted or sued for slander against him because he decided to make himself a public figure. Whereas if you just like picked a random person on the street and said some untrue bullshit about them, that would be much easier to prove that it falls under the legal definition of slander. Donald Trump actually proposed changing that to make it just as easy for untrue statements about public figures to qualify as slander, but I strongly disagree with Trump on that matter. I'm sorry, you decide to run for president, you're signing up to have a bunch of shit said about you. You're signing up to have a lot of people hate you, because no matter who's president, a huge chunk of the country is going to hate your guts. That's all right. If you don't want to deal with that, don't run for high office.
Right. I mean, I guess there is a little bit of a point to make there, but let's say if, for example, it was Don Lemon saying that Chris Cuomo was a pedophile or something.
That could definitely fall under slander, yes.
And could probably fall under Don Lemon getting fired from CNN if he can't back up that claim.
And like the Covington kids, what happened to them was a clear case of criminal slander, which is why they're being sued for hundreds of millions of dollars. I doubt they'll ever get that much.
You mean the people who slandered them are getting sued, not the Covington kids?
Yeah. The people who slandered them, the Washington Post, what have you, are getting sued for hundreds of millions of dollars, and it probably will be settled out of court for something substantial, because those kids were not public figures. They were just random kids who just someone happened to film. The idea that they qualify as a public figure because the news media slandered them is absolute insanity to me. That actually was the Washington Post response, that he's now a public figure. Well, why is he a public figure? Because we made him one to slander him. That don't cut it, buddy.
All right, so I'm going to continue on with this article. I mean, I love all this dialogue and commentary that we're given, but it is kind of dragging us out a bit. Consider also a sort of reverse scenario. What if a committed white nationalist restaurant owner decided to act on his convictions and ban all non-whites from his restaurant, even though some of the most regular and highest paying customers aren't white? Even assuming the government took no action, ridding himself of paying customers could only result in a restaurant with lower profits, even if there were no ensuing boycotts from the white customers. The restaurant owner may feel better about himself, but he is nonetheless worse off.
Which is why there's no substantial movement in this country to reinstate discrimination laws, mostly because no business would ever survive instituting them, even if anti-discrimination laws were repealed, or in some business decided to ban black customers, that business would still go out of business within a few months.
This kind of gives me flashbacks back to freaking January of 2018 when you like schooled Cult of Ham on Jim Crow laws and the right to deny service.
I'll school him any day.
He was all like, the free market will not solve the problem of discrimination. And you were like, hold on, that's bullshit.
Well, no, that wasn't really the claim that I took most issue with. He claimed that Jim Crow laws were there because of the free market, which is a steaming load of horse crap, because Jim Crow laws actually forced businesses to discriminate and segregate their customers. So Jim Crow laws were absolutely not a condition of the free market, but of
they were anti-free market,
misguided state and local laws mostly.
And then I like later made a video researching into that claim because did you see that video that I made? It was called Jim Crow laws were anti-free market.
I think I watched it. I think a long time ago, though, so I don't remember it well.
Yeah. Anyway, moving on. To be clear, what about all the people kicked out of places because of MAGA hats? I say that the property owner has the right to do that, Red.
I would agree, too. I do think they do have the right to do that. But I think people saying that, like, property owner on the left saying that it's different to kick off someone for wearing a MAGA hat than kick you out because you're blind or black or gay or what have you. But, it's totally different. No, it really is the same thing.
Mm-hmm. All right. So to be clear, I'm not saying that big tech firms are not profitable or were never profitable. It may be the case that they currently remain profitable even without people like Alex Jones. I'm saying only that ridding oneself of paying customers and partners only makes sense if a business has more to gain from doing so than will be lost in profits. In the case of big tech, there is definitely something more to gain. Predictably, as with every other discussion of natural monopolies in history, the drama of internet censorship has led to calls for the internet being regulated for the safety of the people. Content creators like BPS, that being Black Pigeon Speaks is what the initials are right there, are understandably concerned about losing their primary sources of income. However, economist Greg Yarrell's research has suggested that the actual results of these types of regulations will be higher prices for consumers and guaranteed profits for the regulated industries. Interesting. Even if an internet bill of rights is passed and big tech is allowed to allow, even if an internet bill of rights, my bad. I do not know how I misread that, but I did. Even if an internet bill of rights is passed and big tech is forced to allow right-wing voices back onto their platforms, this will only give credence to the idea that big tech firms are essential services and must be guaranteed by government as a public utility. This will finally give government the complete control of the internet that they crave and leave big tech firms without any incentive to do things in the best interests of their customers. In the short term, commentators like BPS may see their income saved, but they stand to lose far more in the long term. As the saying goes, the same government that has the power to give you everything you want is a government that has the power to take everything that you have.
And that's a very good argument there. And Black Pigeon Speaks, he's a very, very extreme figure. If you ever watched his content, he is very, very far right, and yet YouTube has not deleted his channel. He's had it for years. He has nearly 500,000 subscribers.
I mean, I mean, is he as edgy as somebody like Ethan Ralph, for example?
I know he's friends with Ethan Ralph. He's politically, they're probably the same, but they have different personalities.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of what I suspect.
They're both kind of far right figures, kind of more in the alt-right area of the spectrum.
Yeah, alt-right-ish, because let's keep in mind that Ethan Ralph, no credible, incredible evidence to say that he is full-on alt-right.
I'll say alt-right-ish. All right, I think that's fair.
Yeah. As a final point, it is simply wrong to say that competition cannot mitigate this problem. After Alex Jones was banned from Big Tech, he reported that traffic to his website and number of subscribers hit record highs. Well, okay. That backfired on YouTube, Twitter, and all the rest. In addition, the user base of the alternative platform BitChute nearly doubled overnight, with more and more users agreeing to donate to their platform. Even if someone like BPS was kicked off YouTube, I seriously doubt that his 400,000 subscribers would simply say, oh well, and move on as though he never existed. If they truly enjoyed his content, the loyal fans would follow him to a new platform and support him with crowdfunding. Yeah, I can definitely imagine that being the case. I mean, I, of course, would not be able to have, if me or Loudmouth, for example, were to like lose our YouTube channels and we switch to BitChute, we would not have the exact same number of fans or anything like that.
No, not even close. Not that either of us have that many fans to begin with. It's mostly a hobby.
I probably get a couple dozen at most subscribers to subscribe to my BitChute channel, and then a Loudmouth would at most get a couple hundred, if that.
Probably, yeah, that's probably it.
It's also worth noting that in their current form, Big Tech is not, in fact, immune from going under. Ironically, one day after publishing the video that this article is a response to, BPS posted another video noting that big tech firms are now on the decline. Well, if that's the case, Black Pigeon Speaks, there is the evidence to how you do not need more government regulations to, to hit hard against these big tech firms, that be censoring you and so forth, kicking you off the platform. All right. So the bottom line is that libertarians are not holding the door open to be run over by the left. We are simply trying to avoid solving a problem by invoking the very entity that made this problem possible via subsidies, for example. That entity is, of course, the government. It always is. We don't need an Internet Bill of Rights or any other form of government regulation for big tech. We need to get the government to remove its dirty fingers from the industry entirely. I hope that more people will come to see the state for what it is, a cancer that destroys everything it touches. And that is my 2 cents. Take it for what it's worth. All right. He also put a note down here, so it might be like a disclaimer. Let's read it. It is worth noting that websites like YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter are not entirely in the clear simply because they are private corporations. In many cases, they have defrauded their users by banning them for hate speech, quote unquote, even though they have failed to offer a consistent definition of hate speech. These platforms also defraud their customers by not being forthright about their explicit banning of right-leaning content. As such, I believe banned users may in fact be able to bring civil suits against their platform.
Well, that's another good case. Well, every private company is required basically to uphold the values they say they will, and provide the services they say they will. For example, if I pay a guy to cut my lawn, he takes my money, but then doesn't cut my lawn, I can sue him. So in that sense, what they're doing could constitute a contract violation of some kind.
Yeah, but that like suing somebody for lying against you and defrauding, as 2 cents used that word in the note at the bottom of his article. That's more subjective, though. That's more
Right,
of
it
a
is a
case by
lot more
case
subjective.
basis.
It's not exactly the same thing. It's kind of, but I was just kind of making a more generalized point. Yeah.
But doing something like objectively with a broad stroking brush saying we have like a one size fits all plan for everybody is not the way to go. Like somebody could be completely and utterly innocent of ever like censoring people at all, but yet you're still going to encroach them with regulations and so forth, almost meaninglessly.
Right. When it comes to big tech, I'm not really in favor of like a government customers bill of rights. All right. I'm not really that passionately against it either, but I do think big tech firmly deserves a lot of the criticism they get from the right. And it's very important that people really speak out very strongly whenever big tech unfairly bans somebody or unfairly violates someone's free speech in a way that's stupid. They really do need to be exposed because it's really important that sunlight be the best disinfectant, that you really expose their behavior because they constantly lie about their behavior. Like a website like the Daily Coast, for example, a far left website, they'll explicitly say our website's for far left progressives. We ban all conservatives. Fine. But Facebook and Twitter don't try to pretend that they're neutral platforms, and they're very clearly not.
Mm-hmm.
So they need to expose that they aren't what they say they are. All right. Banning people for typing learn to code at journalists while letting a leftist get away with a lot of shit that would get any conservative banned. These things can be very clearly demonstrated. So what's in the chat now?
There's quite a bit going on in the chat. Like this is like one of the most active chats that I've had for my Strikeforce news.
Hold on. There we go.
All right, so Loudmouth is left. I do not know if I'll stay on very long. There's a lady who's sure all the glitters is gold. Okay, I'll stop singing. Sleepy Projection says, I don't even like politics. I'm just here to talk to people. Yeah. I mean, with the way that you go talking about politics or responding to people who go talking about politics, Sleepy, it seems to me that you're kind of, you don't have like a firm anchor on where you sit on the political spectrum. You just all like, I'm just going to watch the fireworks go on between both sides because both sides are idiots or something. No, that's me joshing you mostly. I'm pretty free market, but I believe in a workers' Bill of Rights. I mean, isn't that what the Bill of Rights and the Constitution basically is, conservative Californian? I was banned for 12 hours for tweeting learn to code. Yeah, I mean, it's shitty, but I believe that Twitter has the right to do that if they want. I mean, it's stupid, but still. All right, so Conservative Californian says in the chat, this is my second live stream here. Well, congratulations, ConCal. And Red Feather says, I lost count how many live streams I've seen here. Yeah. You are a loyal viewer here, Red Feather, and I am all the thankful for it. Yeah. I don't think that Loudmouth is going to come back on anytime soon, so I'm going to just cut out right now because I really have to use the bathroom. But to Loudmouth, see you later, and to all of you in the chat, this is all that I have to say. Like, watch the entirety of this stream. It was a fairly substantive one. I say we talk first about the idea of privatizing the border wall in the South. We talked about the Federal Reserve and how it is on a razor's edge and how dangerous a precedent it is putting forth, economically speaking. obviously economically speaking. Then we talked about what was the third story we were talking about? Oh yeah, we talk about the Mueller probe and how the Mueller probe found no Russia collusion at all. And then we talked about, obviously, the Internet Bill of Rights. Black Pigeon speaks and Sticks, Hex and Hammers, and a whole lot of other people's advocacy for it, and internet websites kicking people off their platforms. That article provided by my 2 cents. But yeah. So anyway, y'all have a good day now. See y'all later. And God bless you all.